Good afternoon. My name is Bertha Ocasio. I'm coming before you today to have a discussion about initiatives and referendums in Arizona. We will be discussing a basic definition of initiative and a basic definition of referendum. We will also talk about how initiatives and referendums are created, and we will compare and contrast initiatives and referendums, as well as speak about the pros and cons of each. And then we will explain how initiatives and referendums support the idea of direct democracy as outlined in the Arizona Constitution. So let us begin with what is an initiative? An initiative is any measure taken out by the people. It is a form of direct democracy that allows its citizens, voters, to pass the state legislature and propose new laws, amend Arizona's revised statutes, or propose new laws to the Arizona Constitution by gathering enough signatures from registered voters to place the issue directly on the ballot. There are two primary initiatives. One is the statutory initiative. It's the purpose, a new state law or change in existing statute. The second is the Constitution Initiative, and it proposes an amendment directly to the Arizona Constitution. How are incentives created? The first part is they form a political committee through the Arizona Secretary of State's online system, Beacon, or they are to be prepared to designate an existing non-candidate political committee to act as a petition sponsor. The second would be to file an application for a serial number with the Arizona Secretary of State's office. The third would be to acquire the appropriate initiative petition, again from Arizona's Secretary of State's office. The fourth would be to ensure any paid or out-of-state circulators have registered with the Arizona Secretary of State's office. The fifth would be to circulate petitions and obtain signatures from eligible voters, meaning that there has to be canvassing done by a lot of people. The sixth would be to submit a circulated petition to the Arizona Secretary of State's office by the deadline. And seventh would be the Secretary of State and applicable county recorders. They will process the petitions and determine whether enough signatures were gathered to place the measure on the ballot. So there are some key rules and regulations which are single Article 4 of the state constitution. All citizens initiated ballot measures must address a single distinct subject or purpose. The second is a funding mandate. If an initiative mandates state expenditures, it must explicitly designate a funding source. And the fourth would be a passage requirement. If the initiative makes it onto the ballot, it needs a simple majority of votes to pass, unless it proposes a new tax, which will require 60% of the votes. Municipal level initiatives is the next piece, and that in addition to the state laws, initiatives processes extends to local counties. So in this case, the city of Phoenix or the city of Chandler, to enact, amend, or repeal local charter and code provisions. These are governed by local municipal codes rather than a statewide constitutional percentage, and it does include the city of Phoenix. Next, we will speak about the referendums. What is a referendum? It is the method of which voters may veto a vote or part of a law by gathering signatures. The Arizona Constitution states this is very important. The people reserve the right to use their own options, the power to approve or reject at the polls any act or item, sections, or parts of any act of the legislation. And that comes from the Arizona Constitutional Article 4, Part 1. How does it work? Okay, the person organizing, putting forth the referendum must file signatures with the Arizona Secretary of State within 90 days of the legislator, and then enact the House or Senate bill in question, and it adjourns to sindi. Okay. If enough signatures are submitted, the bill will be placed in the next general election ballot. A yes vote is a vote that allows the law to go into effect, while a no vote essentially constitutes a vote for citizens' veto, preventing the referred bill from going into effect. And that comes from the Arizona Constitutional Article 4, Part 1. The individual organization wishing to refer a measure to the ballot must either file a statement of organization using Arizona's Secretary of State's campaign financing filing system or designate an existing non-candidate committee to act as the referendum sponsor. The Secretary of State will not accept an application without an accompanying statement or designation. So this is a real process, but obviously worth going through. An individual or organization wishing to refer a measure to the ballot must also submit an application for a serial number. That serial number stating their intent to circulate a statewide referendum petition. The Arizona Secretary of State office will complete the remainder of the form and issue a unique serial number to be printed on the front and the back of each petition sheet. The Secretary of State's office will also provide instructions regarding proper completion of the statewide referendum petition form. At the time of submission, an application for serial number must include the accompanying title and text of the measure to be referred. The minimum number of signatures required to refer a measure to the ballot is equal to 5% of the number of votes casted at the last gubernatorial election. The deadline to file referendum petition signatures is no later than 90 days after the sine die, the date of adjournment of the legislation session in which the measure was passed. And this information came from the Arizona Constitution Article 4, Part 1. Okay. Referendum. That pretty much explained how that worked. All right. So the next thing I want to talk to you about are the pros and cons of the initiative and referendum. Okay, so the pros and cons of this referendum are basically this. Citizen participation. Those processes allows a citizen to directly influence laws and policies, increasing democratic participation. That's definitely a pro. Checks and balances. They provide a check and balance on legislation, preventing it from passing laws that are unpopular or against the public interest. That's also a pro. Policy innovation. Policy innovations are citizens can propose innovation policies that the legislation might not consider. And the cons of it, complexity of issues. So some issues are so complex that they require expert knowledge. These are special lawyers that write up these specific laws and mandates. And for the average citizen, these are things that we will not be able to understand. We don't have that amount of time that these policymakers or special interest groups really focus on. They know all of the details and how they're going to work. And what ends up happening sometimes is these the knowledge for this obviously making an informed decision. We may not, as the general population, really have all that information to realize the long-term effect of some of these laws that we're asking for. Another con would be influence of money. So wealthy individuals and organizations can use their resources to promote their own interests. That's a problem. And it potentially is screwing, it's causing the democratic, it messes with the democratic process is what I'm trying to say. So we have to be careful of that because money is power, and we know that, and not all of us have that those big resources behind us to make those influences. So we have to be careful. That is definitely a con. Another con would be a short-term focus. Again, voters may focus on a short-term benefit, and as I mentioned before, they will ignore the long-term consequences. So that covers our pros and cons. So in concluding, initiative and referendum processes in Arizona have their advantages in promoting citizen participation and checks and balances. They also have their drawbacks, such as the potential for influence of, as I mentioned, money, short-term focus, and complexity of issues. It's so important for voters to really have a great understanding of the process, and we need to make sure that that process always is transparent and fair for everyone. Thank you.